Hello everyone, and welcome back. If you're new here, we're all about pantry preparedness. I'm going to be tossing a bunch of numbers at you today, but it's all important, so stick with me through the end. Today is August 12th, 2026, and at noon Eastern the USDA WASDE report dropped. I've been through every table, and I want to walk you through the 3 stories that matter most for your pantry and for understanding where food prices are heading this fall. Corn, wheat, and believe it or not, beef. The WASDE report showed corn yield at 180.7 bushels per acre in this field survey, the August estimate, meaning USDA actually went into the fields. This is the most significant single number in the report. The July trendline projected 183 bushels per acre, and the market expected around 182.4 to 182.5. USDA came in at 180.7, a miss of 1.7 to 2.3 bushels per acre, below every estimate in the pre-report survey. For context, last year's record corn yield was 186.5 bushels per acre, so this year's first field estimate sits 5.8 bushels below that record. Combine that with reduced planted area 95.3 million acres in 2026 versus 97.3 million in 2025, and total corn production came in at 16.013 billion bushels, down from last year's 17.021 billion. That's a reduction of more than 1 billion bushels year over year. Try picturing that. I want to give honest context rather than alarm you, because that serves nobody. 16 billion bushels is still the second largest corn crop on record. This is not a shortage, it's a tightening, and that distinction matters. What changed significantly is ending stocks, the supply carrying into next marketing year. New crop corn ending stocks came in at 1.653 billion bushels, down from 1.790 billion in July. That 137 million bushel reduction reflects both the yield miss and strong export demand. Ending stocks now represent about 10% of annual use, a tighter supply situation than the market had positioned for. Corn doesn't show up directly in most home pantries in large amounts, but it's everywhere in the food supply chain. It's the primary feed grain for poultry and pork, the source of high fructose corn syrup in nearly every packaged sweet product, and the base for corn oil, corn starch, and corn-derived sweeteners. A tighter corn supply with a higher farm price means higher feed costs for chicken and pork producers within 6 to 12 months, not tomorrow, but coming. It means higher input costs for packaged food manufacturers relying on corn-derived ingredients. It does not mean an immediate spike at the grocery store. There's a lag of months, not days, but it is coming. And it's now confirmed by the first field survey of the season. For your 6-week pantry build, specifically if you haven't completed week 1 grains, this report is the most direct argument for doing it now rather than later. The grains you seal long-term this week are sealed at pre-data price. Soybeans came in at 52.7 bushels per acre, just below the 53 trend line and the 52.9 analyst expectation. Total production hit 4.519 billion bushels, above expectations, because harvested area was revised up 1.4 million acres to 85.8 million. Ending stocks came in at 320 million bushels, up slightly from 310 million in July. Broadly, this is neutral, not the story of this report. For your pantry, soybean oil is cooking oil, and a neutral soybean report is mildly positive there relative to the corn picture. But the El Niño risk to palm oil supply I covered back in July remains the dominant forward pressure on cooking oils overall. The soybean story doesn't change that. The wheat section confirms and extends the story we've been tracking since early July. Total U.S. wheat production came in at 1.531 billion bushels, the smallest since 1970-71. Winter wheat came in at 986 million bushels, smallest since 1963-64. Hard red winter wheat came in at 468 million bushels, smallest since 1957. Wheat farm price was raised to $6.20 a bushel, up 20 cents from July. Wheat ending stocks came in at 717 million bushels, down from 722 million in July. I want to be precise here, because a viewer once caught me conflating these categories in an earlier video. These are 3 separate measurements, each historically significant at different thresholds. Total U.S. wheat lowest since 1970-71, winter wheat lowest since 1963-64, and hard red winter wheat, the class used for most bread flour, lowest since 1957-58. This report confirmed all 3 simultaneously. It's not one isolated data point. It's a genuinely historical supply event across multiple wheat categories at once. The 6/20 farm price matters because farm prices lead flour prices by roughly 6 to 12 months. That 20-cent increase, layered on top of the 11.1% year-over-year increase already confirmed in July's price outlook, tells you the direction of flour prices this fall and winter. USDA's food price outlook had already forecast farm-level wheat prices rising 11.8% for 2026, with a prediction interval reaching as high as 25.1%. This August increase is consistent with the upper end of that range, not the midpoint. Your Week 1 flour purchase is the single most relevant action item in this whole report. Every pound of flour you've already put up is locked in at pre-August 12th prices. The farm price increase will lag into retail over coming months, but it's coming. One more time, for anyone new, commercially ground flour is not a long-term storage option unless frozen. Full stop. You can seal it in Mylar if you want, and that will keep out bugs, moisture, and light. But it will not last beyond about 2 years before going rancid. It has natural oils in it, and shelf life depends entirely on your storage conditions. Hot and humid climates will shorten that window further. I live somewhere with central air, and mine lasted just under 2 years. There's no reason to buy 5 years worth of flour that won't survive past year 2. Buy enough to get ahead of the curve, then backfill in small amounts as you use it, while everyone else pays premium prices come fall and winter. Now for cattle, and this one needs the most careful explanation. You'll see headlines ranging from beef prices about to drop to screwworm infestation coming to your state. Neither is accurate. The real picture is more complicated and more useful. New World screwworm is a parasitic fly. The female lays eggs in open wounds or body openings of living, warm-blooded animals, and the larvae feed on living tissue not dead. A small wound from a tick bite, an ear tag, or even a routine scratch is enough to attract a female, who can lay 200 to 300 eggs at a time and up to 3,000 over her lifetime. Untreated infestations can kill livestock within days. USDA estimated screwworm cost U.S. cattle producers $50 to $100 million per year before eradication in the 1960s, achieved through sterile insect dispersal, releasing sterile male flies to outcompete fertile ones. Full U.S. eradication was confirmed in 1966. Cases began surging in Central America in 2023, moving north through Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Belize, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. Mexico's first detection came in November 2024, in the far south. By July 2025, USDA closed the southern border entirely to cattle imports. On June 3, 2026, the first U.S. case in 60 years was confirmed in Texas. As of July 2026, 42 cases have been confirmed nationally, 41 in Texas, 1 in New Mexico. The June 3rd animal has since recovered. The border timeline matters for understanding what reopening actually means. Border restrictions began in November 2024 as screwworm spread north in Mexico. In February 2025, the border reopened with new inspection protocols, and imports rebounded to about 20,000 head per week. On May 11, 2025, USDA closed the border again after what Secretary Rollins called an unacceptable northward advance. On July 9, 2025, another case appeared in Veracruz, 160 miles north of the sterile fly dispersal grid, and the border stayed closed. On July 24, 2026, USDA announced a phased reopening starting August 24 through Douglas, Arizona only. That means the border was effectively closed to cattle imports for over a year. Before the crisis, Mexico shipped roughly 1.1 to 1. 2 million feeder cattle to the U.S. annually, about 3 to 3.5% of the total national feeder cattle supply, but 18% of annual feedlot placements in Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, and California specifically. The closure cut 2025 imports to an estimated 230,000 head, with industry estimates suggesting about 120,000 head per month have backed up in Mexico. Combined with the smallest U.S. cattle herd in 75 years, this has directly contributed to record beef prices. The August WASDE lowered its 2026 beef production estimate to 24.967 billion pounds, and cattle farm price was lowered to $245.35 per hundredweight from $251.10, reflecting some market anticipation of the coming reopening. Starting August 24th, one port, one state, Douglas, Arizona, crossing from Sonora. Not all ports, not all of Mexico. Cattle must originate specifically from Sonora and Chihuahua, the two border states USDA identified as lowest risk due to strong animal health infrastructure and geographic distance from the outbreak zones. The nearest confirmed screwworm case to the Douglas port, as of July 22nd, was about 325 miles away. That's USDA's own figure. Every animal must originate from low-risk regions of Sonora or Chihuahua, be held in pre-export inspection facilities for 3 to 5 days, receive individual screening by a Mexican veterinarian, be treated with medications including ivermectin, show no visible open wounds, and pass full USDA inspection at the port. This is a 30-day trial, and USDA can pause or halt it if monitoring shows increased risk. The Santa Teresa and Columbus ports in New Mexico are expected to reopen later. Will prices drop? Not immediately, not dramatically, and probably not as much as headlines suggest. With the U.S. calf crop at its smallest since 1941, cattle prices near records, and heifer retention underway, most agricultural economists, including those quoted from Oklahoma State and Texas A&M, argue the phased restart isn't that significant relative to the underlying structural supply issues. Even if all 120,000 backed up head crossed immediately, which they won't given the 30-day trial and capacity limits, that's a one-time bump against an annual U.S. market of roughly 90 million cattle. Meaningful for Southwest feedlots, but not a national supply event. Markets had already partly priced this in when USDA announced the reopening on July 27th. Beef markets weakened immediately. The CME feeder cattle index had already dropped $3.21 from its June 24th high before the announcement, and choice boxed beef values declined 3.97 cents from their peak. The market moved on the announcement itself, not on cattle actually crossing. Short-term, August through October, minimal direct impact. Douglas is a trial volume, ramping slowly. And feeder cattle need months in feedlots before becoming beef cattle. Entering August 24th won't be processed until late 2026 at the earliest. Medium term, late 2026 into 2027. If the Douglas trial succeeds and Santa Teresa and Columbus reopen, additional supply may provide modest relief to Southwest feedlots and slightly moderate prices compared to what they'd otherwise be. Economists describe this as a moderating influence, not a price collapse. Long-term, the structural story barely changes. The U.S. cattle herd remains at its lowest point in 75 years, and rebuilding a herd takes years, not months. Even with full reopening of all Mexican border ports and 1.1 million head flowing in annually, still just 3 to 3.5% of U.S. feeder supply. Structural tightness in domestic cattle supply will likely persist through 2027 and into 2028. The screwworm risk itself remains real, with 42